Hello, everybody. Good afternoon to those of you joining us from Europe, and good morning to those of you from, like me, from North America. Welcome to the launch of this year's edition of the Global Moped Sharing Market Report. We're very excited to be here. We have a great panel discussion coming right up with some fantastic guests. I will make the introductions in just a moment. But first, just a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, we are recording this session, so you will get to the link to the recording after the webinar. You will also get a link to the report that you all pre-registered for right at the end of the hour here, right at the end of the discussion. And finally, please do use the Q&A functionality if you have some questions for our panelists. There should be a button somewhere on your Zoom interface, either right at the top or right at the bottom. At the end of the hour, we hope to have a few minutes for questions from the audience, from you. So yeah, we have three of the leading European moped sharing operators with us. Together, their fleets combine for about almost, I think, 20,000 mopeds throughout the continent. So let me make the introductions. So representing Cultra, who is present in Spain and Italy and France and Portugal, we have Oriol Marimon Clos. He's the general manager for B2C at Cultra. Hello, Oriol.
Hello, good afternoon, and thanks for the invitation.
Awesome, great to have you here. Also joining us is Paul van Marienburg, the managing director of Czech, who provides share mopeds in Netherlands and Germany. Hi, Paul, welcome.
Hey, Julius, thanks for having me, guy.
Thank you. And we have Bertrand Altmaier, the CEO of Cityscoot. He's also on our panel here. You can find Cityscoot mopeds in Paris and Nice and Milan and Turin. I hope I'm not forgetting any major city there, Bertrand. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Happy to be around.
Thank you. And finally, last but not least, the lead author of the report you all pre-registered for and will get soon is Enrico Hove, my colleague here at Inverse, where we make mobility shareable through telematics and connectivity solutions for all sorts of shared vehicles, including, of course, mopeds. Hello, Enrico.
Hey, Julius. Nice to see you again.
Awesome. So to set the table, it'll be great to hear from you, Enrico, about the key findings and the key results that you uncovered while writing the report, and we can get into the panel discussion right after that. So perhaps you can start by giving us a quick intro into the report and sharing a couple of highlights with us while I advance the slides here.
Yeah, sure. Sounds like a good idea. We thought it might be a great opportunity before we dig into the panel questions and to talk to some of the leading operators in the European arena, from our perspective, main arena in terms of moped sharing, since more than every second shared moped actually comes from Europe. So that's why we also feature this market at this time. This is also one of the markets Inverse is most active in. And that's why we focus on this, but it's not the only market in terms of the moped sharing market. In general, to start with the moped report itself, we've been doing that since a couple of years now, following the moped sharing market and publishing once a year this annual global moped sharing market report. In the beginning, it was still called scooter sharing market report. And as you all know, then the kick scooters at some point were introduced, and we also felt like differentiating between the different modes of shared mobility is a good idea, and we renamed it to Global Moped Sharing Market Report. The report itself covers the entire global market of moped sharing, which includes not only all of the operators, but also different vehicle types. We think of moped sharing as this Vespa-like L1 class moped, but we also include and track down shared motorcycles in different markets. And finally, this year, for the first time in detail, we also feature moped bike hybrids. We get to that in a second. It's one of the major trends we've seen this year, which mainly takes place actually outside of Europe. It's a bunch of statistics. You'll receive the report in a couple of minutes right after this panel discussion. So at 5 p.m. CET, Berlin, Rotterdam, Paris time. This is when everybody who signed up for this report is in this panel discussion here at the moment will receive the report at first. It's roughly 60 pages. And Julius, if you go to the next page, I can quickly guide you guys through the main KPIs of this year's market. First of all, on a top line level, I believe it's most important to say that all major KPIs which we're tracking, they're still on a growth perspective. So the market is growing. In terms of user base, we're tracking down and estimating roughly on a global basis 17 million users. This might also include double registrations. I think I'm one of the more extreme cases, being a moped sharing researcher, being registered for dozens of moped sharing services. But normally in some of the cities and the competition cities, like people are then also signed up like for 2 or 3 operators. This is included here. We have 94 operators on a global level. This is more than we saw last year in more than 220 cities. This is roughly 50 cities more than in 2021. Quite a big growth, actually. Majorly, or like in a big majority of the cities taking place in smaller cities, actually, not only the metropolises like Paris and Amsterdam and Berlin, for example, and Madrid. On a fleet size level, we do see 130,000 shared mopeds, as said earlier. This also includes shared motorcycles and moped bike hybrids, which is roughly a growth of 7 to 8% on a year-on-year basis. Then finally, coming to the second row of the major KPIs of the market for this year, I think it's really interesting that more and more OEMs from a brand perspective are supplying the space and the shared mobility market. And at the moment, we have 40 different vehicle brands on our map, like brands like NIO, GoVax, Gogoro, Vimoto, Kimco, and others. So the market there is also changing and growing along with the growing fleet size on a global level. We've never seen moped sharing in as many countries as we've seen them this year, 36 in total, which is 9 more countries than we tracked down last year. I think this is super interesting. I initially said like more than every second moped can be found in Europe. This value has been a little higher in the past years, so it's declining, but the European market obviously is still the biggest. But I think it's worth mentioning that the majority of growth, which we can track down in the past year, has been actually taking place in this moped bike hybrid section, which we sometimes call light mopeds. There is no exact defined term for that, but this is super interesting. No matter which vehicle type we're talking about, the entire market is electric. So 97% of the fleet we're seeing is electric. It's pretty similar to what we saw last year. The major change from a combustion fleet or mixed fleet on a global level towards that electric fleet has been taking place in the last 2 years and is kind of completed now. There are only now very few operators and very few countries where we actually see combustion mopeds, one of the biggest probably being India. And then finally, also from a user or usage perspective, we see that especially in the European cities, as some recent Fluke2 data has been showing, that the growth in usage has been also there. We see, for example, for major European cities, a growth of more than 50% in terms of Q2 2022 in comparison to Q2 last year, so 2021. This is super interesting. We see this market is still very dynamic, which leads us to a couple of trends which we identified last year. And I would just quickly introduce 5 of them. There are more trends we saw. We'll probably discuss a little bit in this panel discussion some of the further trends, but what we see is what I mentioned multiple times now: moped bike hybrids is a thing. To define it out here, there is a new vehicle category in between a classic moped and an e-bike. And this is super interesting. Very often it looks like a moped or looks closer to a moped, but technically and even legally is very often, considering the market and depending on the market, it is considered by law an e-bike, which leaves then a couple of implications like helmet, yes or no, the speed of the moped itself and stuff like that. We see a lot of diversification in the market. So it's not only about free-floating B2C moped sharing anymore. We're seeing a couple of different aspects in that field. What we also can see is a lot of multimodality. More and more operators are strongly adding more vehicle classes to their fleets. And we do have two interesting examples for that trend. Oriol, you guys run, for example, e-bikes in Barcelona. And I know that Paul, you guys have kick scooters live in Germany, in Düsseldorf. Maybe we can discuss this a little bit later, but this is also representing quite some of the operators on a global perspective. Sharing meets delivery is one of the final trends. We see that more and more operators are specifically interested in the sharing target group. And then finally, there's also a lot of market concentration happening. So 10 of the biggest operators, they run roughly 60% of the fleet. So 10 out of these 94 operators, which we found, they run 60% of the fleet. This is quite a big concentration. And this continues to be there and continues to be increased also in terms of concentration level. And we also saw a couple of takeovers, including Emmy by GoTo. We saw Go Sharing, Zigzag, Mimoto has been acquired. There were a couple of trends this year, but I'm super interested and excited to see this discussion kicking off now. And I believe we're discussing quite some additional trends this year.
Yeah, absolutely, and I got a sneak peek at the report. I did a little bit of editing on it, and thank you, Enrico. I know you put a lot of work into it over the last few months. It's always interesting to see the trends and see how they compare to last year, right? Like you know, the trends are still going up, but in slightly different ways. This year, this like you said, this moped e-bike hybrid is big, and also I think it's worth to mention that while you know all our panels here are from Europe, and Europe is still over more than 50% of the market, you have some really cool insights from Asia, particularly Taiwan in the report. So yeah, I think everybody's really looking forward to it, and you will get it in about 45 minutes. But for now, let's ask our panelists some questions here. So Oriol, we'll start with you. So Cultra originally came from a more traditional, I guess, rental space. So how important has moped sharing become to you, and how do the business verticals come together?
Right. Yeah. So first of all, and in order for anyone to understand where do we come from, as you said before, it was in 2006 when the company was founded, and the very first service that Cultra offered was renting of mopeds, of motorcycles to tourists. So we come from B2C short-term rental service. At some point, we also launched long-term services, and it was in 2016 when we first launched the sharing service. At that time, it was launched under a different brand. It was named eCultra. It sounds probably exactly the same, but it was a totally different brand, a different logo. Everything was different. Also, teams were different. It was only in 2019 when we came back together to the same brand, only Cultra. And it was when we started seeing all the synergies of working much together, much close to each other. So the vision of the company, or the mission, it's always the same. It's offering mobility solutions on two wheels based on technology, electrical, and with talented people. So this is all the same for station-based and free flow. And at the end of the day, there are lots and lots of processes which are the same. So customer service is the same. For instance, insurance management is the same. Now that almost the whole fleet, not only in free flow, but also in station-based, is electric, all the mechanics, all the expertise in our workshops is being shared by all the different verticals. So at the end of the day, being able to offer per minute, per day, per month, and even per years to B2C and B2B customers is a huge advantage for the company in order to offer all this wide range of services.
Okay, so it sounds like operationally, at least there was some synergies, right? So it wasn't like you said, the vehicles are the same. Like I said, the batteries are the same. So not to say that it was easy, but there was definitely an opportunity there. There's for some synergies.
Yes, there are huge synergies in lots of aspects. Of course, there are some vehicles that cannot switch from B2B to B2C, or sometimes not all electrical vehicles have swapping batteries. Therefore, they are not suitable for the free float we are offering nowadays. But yeah, the reason why we started merging back everything into the same brand was because of all the synergies. At the end of the day, pushing one single brand and mobility solutions is super powerful for the market and gives us a lot of recognition in all the segments we are approaching, both B2C and B2B. So makes total sense and lots of synergies at the end of the day.
Awesome. Thank you, Oriol. Paul, next question for you. So like I mentioned, Czech is in the Netherlands and in Germany. Let's talk about the Dutch market. What makes it different? What makes it special?
Yeah, I think what makes it special, I think, is definitely the culture we have with two-wheelers here in the Netherlands. So I was also looking for some data in order to support this claim, and I was checking like biking behavior. I think it's quite similar to mopeds because you're used to riding a two-wheeler already. And if you look at that, 58% of all the Dutchies use a bike at least twice a week. And for example, if you compare that to France, it's only 18%. So that already says something about how we deal with two-wheelers in this country. I think also what's a big deal is the biking infrastructure. So again, I checked out some metrics here, and you see that the entire cycling infrastructure covers 35K kilometers, which is 25% of the entire infrastructure. If you compare that, for example, to the UK, the UK has now 20,000 kilometers of biking infrastructure, while the country is 6 times bigger. So that definitely says something about, yeah, do you have already the tracks there to drive the moped? And the third thing is, I believe, also the existence of the Snorfiets, which is a crazy vehicle in the Netherlands. Enrico was already talking about this new hybrid moped bike product. But in the Netherlands, we also have the Snorfiets, which is basically a moped that only goes 25K an hour, and you can drive it without a helmet. So the threshold in order to step on a moped and engage into making a trip is pretty low. So I think those 3 factors really support the adoption of shared mopeds in the Netherlands. And you see that right now. I mean, I don't know which numbers you have in the report, obviously, Enrico, but by heart, I think it's about 12,000 to 15,000 shared mopeds only in the Netherlands. And the fact that the threshold is so low also makes the product viable in cities of 100K inhabitants easily. So, and there are, only in the Netherlands, 30 cities with 100K plus inhabitants. So I think that explains.
Right, that makes.
On the other end, obviously, also the policy, but I think that is not super unique. That the Netherlands is really trying to push the cars out of the city center. I mean, you can also say that's for Paris or Barcelona or whatever. It's not super unique.
Yeah, the policy, but there's definitely that culture that you mentioned there. The last time I was in Holland was before shared micromobility really took off. But of course, I noticed all the bikes everywhere, right? Everybody's riding bike. The kind of the hybrid mopeds you mentioned, the ones that can go 25 kilometers an hour, are they the ones that also have the pedals and the engine, or is it a different thing?
No, I think the vehicle that Enrico was talking about, they do have the pedals, and some are also able to fix the speed somehow. I don't know, to use it without the pedals. But the vehicle I'm talking about is just the regular moped, like the NIU or the Segway or whatever. That can also go like up to 70K an hour, but we restrict them to 30, and then they have a different license plate, and you can drive them around without a helmet. And that, by the way, will change from the 1st of January onwards. So you need to put on a speed pedelec helmet on those things. So that might change something with respect to the adoption. On the other hand, we already have this restriction in Amsterdam right now. And we don't see anything going less. The adoption is still high.
Excellent. Good, very good.
Just to add on this, the majority of moped bike hybrids does not have a pedal, so it's pretty similar to the Snorfeeds actually. But some of the markets they rely also on pedals. Indonesia comes to my mind first. They have 2 operators in the European arena. They're not well known, but Migo and Beam are 2 operators in Indonesia which have pedals on a moped-looking vehicle. So it's a very interesting section, very diverse actually.
Very interesting. Okay. Bertrand, next question for you about City Scoot as one of the pioneers in moped sharing. I believe you guys have been first deployed in 2015. So we'd be curious to learn how has the moped sharing market evolved since then, since that first deployment, I guess about 7 years ago.
Yeah, so effectively, City Scoot started its proof of concept on, I think, June 2015. And apart from the fact that in 2015, people saw us as a bit crazy and the activity was really marginal in Paris, the other difference is that we had to develop everything on our own because there were nothing available off the shelf in terms of tech platform, in terms of e-mopeds with enough range or with connectivity. So that is something that has changed a lot because we started from a really customized and homemade product that we had to develop because of this lack of availability. And now what we can see is that there are many options available off the shelf in terms of technology that is really commoditized in for some parts, in terms of connected mopeds, and also in terms of range for e-mopeds. So that's something that have been really, and I think the numbers that Enrico shows with the increasing number of competitors is really helped by that, because now it's not a tech challenge to put together e-moped platform. It's much easier than it used to be in 2015. Obviously, and just mostly talking about Paris, but at that time we had much less competition. We had no competition whatsoever in terms of moped, but we had less competition, no kick scooters, just a station-based bike program, and no free-floating bikes. So the structure of the competition has changed a lot. And I'd say the last point for me, and that is quite important, is that the relationship with the municipality has changed a lot. We used to be able to arrive in cities and basically, I mean, we were not doing that because we wanted to have good relationship with the municipalities, but you could arrive and just deploy your own fleet in a city without asking the city, like what kick scooter operators did in Paris, for instance. At some point, we had 40,000 kick scooters in Paris. I mean, nobody with a wheelchair or a baby stroller could walk on the sidewalks. And now the relationship is much more structured, and as most of you guys know, Paris has launched a tender to regulate that, and most of the big cities are doing so. And it's mostly because of the transcription of European rules to local law that now imposes a contractual relationship with the municipalities.
Yes, that's interesting. We've definitely been following the Paris tender. They seem to be a leader in terms of the way the city regulates the operators, and it definitely was a Wild West. Back when you started, we just to plug our blog space a little bit here. We have an article about kind of the evolution of micromobility in cities, and yeah, the article kind of
But
mirrors your thoughts that it was a Wild West and there was scooters everywhere and there was no regulation, and now things have changed.
well, kick scooters were everywhere. Now it's the Wild West for e-bikes because there is no regulation for e-bikes. So operators, they just deploy gigantic fleets that are unused, low rotation. So I guess no economic, and no profit at all. But they are just trying to increase their footprint, which will result obviously in a tender for bikes. There are questions as well for prohibiting kick scooters in Paris because they've had a lot of accidents. And I received just today a petition from DOT saying, yeah, we should save kick scooters in Paris. I have no opinion on that, and that's not the place to talk about that. But yeah, this is I mean, to me, the municipality and the local authorities, because sometimes it's like groups of municipalities have really taken control of the mobility, and sometimes they impose the connection to local mass or mass platform. So it's a big change. I remember Anne Hidalgo, the mayor of Paris. She inaugurated our service in Paris, but it was kind of the first time, and now they are definitely in control of local micro mobility.
Okay, thank you for your answer, Bertrand. Enrico, next question is for you. So we've been talking about this moped bike sharing hybrid. So tell us a little bit more about it. Specifically, how does it impact the world of moped sharing?
Sure. As said, I believe it's a super interesting development at all. It's something new which we've seen popping up in the past 2 years. It has been around for a little bit longer. But yeah, as described, often the vehicle type itself is in between a classic moped and e-bike, visually more moped, and then legally often considered an e-bike. Depends on the market again. But I think just to track it down, to give you some numbers, we believe an estimate that there are roughly more than 20,000 so-called moped bike hybrids, light mopeds. Maybe it's also a good working term. And this breaks down to roughly 15-16% of the global moped sharing market. So the majority is still the mopeds we're talking about, and the mopeds you guys are running here, the operators. So 75% of the market is L1 class Vespa-like moped sharing. 10% roughly is motorcycle sharing, L3 class, and then the remaining 15-16% is, at least on our maps, is the moped bike hybrid. So it becomes more and more important. This is something where we saw growth in the past years. Again, the countries where we see growth in terms of moped bike hybrids are outside Europe. I also saw your comment, Alexandros, from the audience, that yeah, moped bike hybrids, this is not a big success in Europe for good reason. There's different regulation, different market, different infrastructure. There are different reasons why this mainly is addressing communities which have less often a driver's license. This is one of the success factors, I believe. That's why we see it mainly in India, Indonesia. We see some moped bike hybrids in Turkey. In Pakistan is actually a quite nice fleet, quite considerable fleet. And then finally, we saw also, and this is the only classic Western market, the US, where we also can see a couple of moped bike hybrids. So yes, it's not taking place in Europe. And finally, as said, that yeah, the driver's license ownership is a big factor if moped hybrids become a success in the market. To give you just 2 pilot examples from Europe, we've seen actually moped bike hybrids in Switzerland and Latvia, so not in the big moped sharing arenas with a lot of competition. There might be very particular reasons why this is a success there or why we see pilots. For now, I do not believe that they will spread largely in Europe. I think there will be the L1 class dominance continue to serve the European market.
Right. Interesting. You mentioned Indonesia. When I was in the Philippines, I saw quite a few of those kind of moped bike hybrids, not in shared mobility, just in private ownership, and often still gas powered. But what I found interesting is, you know, the most of the people, especially the young men, you know, they would want their motorcycles or their fast scooters, but the smaller, lighter, perhaps easier to handle moped bike hybrids were quite a bit more popular among, you know, the seniors or the petite women who would perhaps have a harder time handling a heavier vehicle. Okay, let's go back to Oriol with another question for you here. Cooltra also offers e-bike sharing in Barcelona. So how do the different modes, the bike, the e-bike, and the moped, how do they complement each other in your service?
Right. So from a user point of view, or let's say from a market perspective, we decided to launch e-bikes. Well, they fall into our vision, the one I mentioned before. It's a two-wheel mobility solution, electric, right? So it was totally aligned with our vision. And we considered the launch of e-bikes because we thought it was a way of enlarging the total addressable market. So anyone not having a driving license is eligible to ride an e-bike. So somehow it was a chance for us to make the cake a little bit bigger. What we've seen in Barcelona is that the user usually stands for e-bikes or for mopeds. The percentage of users sharing both modalities is not very significant. But this is something that is very specific for Barcelona. Why? Because first of all, we launched in 2016 and we scaled up to 2,300 mopeds till the regulation, when we had to reduce down to 630 and 32, the current fleet size, sorry. And only then in 2020, we introduced e-bikes. So we were a very well-known company on the moped sharing space and not that much on the e-bike space. At the same time, in Barcelona, we are competing against a public service, which has 5,500 available bikes. This is data from yesterday. And also yesterday, they registered 57,000 rides. So it's very difficult to compete into the bike space in Barcelona. What I mean is that if tomorrow we launch in a total new city for Cooltra with mopeds and e-bikes at the same time, and we address a very clear message of e-bike and moped solutions to the market, probably what I would be explaining in terms of multimodality would be totally different. So we are still in the process of scaling up the e-bike sharing service. We totally believe this is part of the future. We've seen what has changed in our cities after the COVID crisis. More and more e-bike lanes, more and more people feeling comfortable about riding into our cities. So we totally believe there is a huge market and huge opportunity there, always respecting the rules and the public space.
Right. So that's so interestingly, I guess what you're saying is that each city, each market is different, right? Just because you have quite a lot of competition and maybe it's slightly tougher go at it in Barcelona doesn't mean it will be just as tricky in another city.
Yes, absolutely. Every city has to be treated differently, and you need to take care of every minimal aspect of a city. It's not a country level decision, but it's a city level decision.
Yeah, and it's not a cookie cutter process from city to city, even within the same country. Yeah. Paul, back to you. Speaking of competition, you're in the markets that have some pretty stiff competition in the Netherlands and Germany. So how do you increase the loyalty of your users in those markets?
Yeah, it's good to realize that I mean, we started in 2020, and different than what Bertrand was just saying, we already had some players around. So when we started, we really focused on creating a custom platform. So that was really like the cutting edge we want to bring to the market, because we want to develop our own features with our own team and have the software in our own hands. So not depending on SaaS solutions or whatsoever. And when we entered the market in the Netherlands, we saw basically two things. It was, on the one hand, we needed a tool to steer user behavior and to also reward certain behavior. And on the other hand, there was not a real loyalty program around yet. So yeah, then we created a program which is called Coins. It's a pretty easy and straightforward incentive program or loyalty program, if you will, and everyone is participating, and you can gain up to 10 coins. And if you have 10 coins, you have a free ride. And you can earn coins with, on the one hand, showing good parking behavior. So everyone in the community is rating each other's parking behavior, and they get coins for that. And then if you park properly, you also receive a coin. If you take an idle scooter or you help us to reset the network, you can earn up to 10 coins immediately. So there's a whole algorithm behind the distribution of those coins. Well, after introducing coins, we've seen basically two things. So on the one hand, we saw parking complaints going down from 4 out of 1,000 trips leads to a complaint to 2 out of 1,000 trips leads to a complaint. So that's a big win. And on the other hand, we also saw user activity going up by 15%, because on the one hand, we reward people with 3 trips. And on the other hand, I mean, yeah, people are just harvesting their coins. So it's a pretty successful program. We still have a lot of options to make it bigger. So that is basically how we do that.
That is very interesting. So that your loyalty program includes not only rewards for using your service, but for also being a good rider, being a good citizen, right? Putting the
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And you see more cities also looking towards what you see also with the kick scooters, like ISA, the speed assistance. We could also use the coins for that. So if you are behaving in a good manner and you do not speed in certain areas, we reward you with coins. So we really believe that we have to reward good behavior and not only punish bad behavior. We also do that, but yeah, rewarding first.
Very good. Yeah, you get your loyalty and you get good PR that way too, right? All your scooters, mopeds are put away properly or more likely to be. Very good.
No, exactly. You basically have 2 products, one for the user and one for the municipalities as well. So we get a lot of insights also, where are the bad complaints or the bad parking behaviors, in which spots do we need to adapt.
Interesting. Cool. Bertrand, let's go back to you for your second question. So France is one of the global top moped sharing markets. To plug our blog once again, our latest article is called a Trip to France, where we talk about shared mobility, not only micromobility, but shared mobility in general in France, and it's definitely a leader. What do you expect in the French market in the near future? And I think you muted yourself, so you need to click the little unmute button there.
Yeah, sorry. I think that what Paul was mentioning is an excellent transition to what I think is going to happen in the near future in France. As I told you, relationship with the municipality is key in France, because they have basically a right of death over you if you don't behave correctly. So I think in the near future, the tenders will be really the key point. The micro-mobility in France is something that is part of everyone who lives in a city everyday life. So, you know, the fact that there is no proof of market to be done really in France, because it's now part of everyone's day-to-day life. But there is still a need to convince a lot of municipalities of the good of micromobility in general, and scooters and mopeds in particular, because they tend, and even really green municipalities, they tend to be reluctant to deploy large fleets. And large fleets is the key to profitability, because if you don't create enough density, you don't become a credible alternative to public transport, and then you can't create repetition and rotation and then profitability. So it's kind of I think it's kind of a strategic period and especially for cities that are smaller than the one where we already operate. So between 100,000 people to maybe 200, 300, 400. If municipalities get convinced that providing density is the key to a profitable service and a good service, it's something that is going to be really, I mean, the market in France is going to keep on increasing at very high levels. But for that, there is a key thing that they need to see, is that operators respect the public space. And to me, it's something that, I mean, I guess everyone around the table is really focused on. And mopeds, basically, we know where people live. So it's quite different from bikes and kick scooters, where people can create fake accounts and then they just do stupid things. For mopeds, we know where people live. We have the credit card numbers, so they can't really behave improperly. So respect of public space is something that we need to prove, to convince the municipalities that we are really good players. But on the other hand, they still have, you know, this noise in the ears that is kick scooters and e-bikes, where they also that have troubles to make their customer respect the public space. So this is as well a challenge, and something that will you know, drive the market in one side or in other side. We can see that, for instance, in the recent tender in Bordeaux, basically the municipality has launched a stupid tender, and there is no profitability possible in the coming over the tender period, and that's something that is really harming the whole sector, because there are operators that are going to operate there. They are going to operate badly, because there is, you know, they cap the number of mopeds to 100 in Bordeaux. That is like really stupid. And I see some guys from Yego in the panel, and I'm sure that they agree. And so, but basically, what was not done is convince the public sector that they need more than that. And the last trend that I would see, and I'm not sure it's only from France, but it's synergies between operators. And I'm convinced that when you have 9 operators, for instance, in Paris, 3 of mopeds, 3 of bikes, 3 of kick scooters, there are environmental and economical synergies that can be done. And what, you know, with the drop we see on the financial markets, operators, even if they are competitors at some point, they will need to create synergies, because, you know, there is no point in swapping a battery from a moped next to a kick scooter and having 3 people going to the same place. So that's basically, in my opinion, what would be the strong trends going forward.
Interesting. So interesting that you mentioned this difference between, you know, the bigger cities, or Paris at least, and smaller cities. And Bordeaux is not a small city. Why do you think, you know, Paris is such a model for tenders, and Bordeaux has what you call a stupid tender? Is it just a lack of
Education,
experience, or yeah?
it's education. Yeah. They come from. They had 11 kick scooters operators.
Mm,
It's just education. I think Paris has always been, in terms of mobility, one of the leader. That's where Uber made their not fortune but reputation, is because they won Paris and London. And that's where they got convinced that their global model was the right one. So yeah, I mean, and you know, helping municipalities to make the right decision is something, and I see people from Fluctio as well, and they are helping that. You know, data exchange. They are not mobility specialists, or there are very few mobility specialists. So we need to be able to help them to understand the reality of our business. They would be better served with profitable companies, and they need to understand that, and they need to understand the criteria that would allow us to be profitable on the long run. And so far, I think that's something that is being built, but it's a sector that has only 5-7 years. That is 7 years old. So there is a lot of things that need to be designed again.
Okay, thank you for that answer, Bertrand. Rico, next question for you. You must ride mopeds fairly often in Germany. So which one do you like? Which one would you choose? And can you name us a couple of selection criteria from an operator's perspective as far as moped models?
From an operator's perspective, so I'm no operator, but if I would be an operator, I mean, basically to start with, I'm a transit person, bike person. I complement my mobility behavior with shared mobility solutions at times. So it's a especially in terms of transit gaps, if there is a break in service or whatever, or like the network is not so dense, then I would use it. That's one thing. The other thing about the moped, specifically from an operator's perspective, I would probably, just looking at the time, keep it short here, but I would choose a moped where damages can be repaired fast and there's constant availability of spare parts. So the value chain, the chain along the value, and the spare parts is very important. Good range is something like, if I can choose 2 batteries instead of 1 battery, so rather 100 kilometers than 50, that's definitely something which improves the operational costs. I run a data collection last year in major European metropolises. So I coordinated along different people which run something about European moped sharing culture. And what we saw there is that in roughly 30% of the rides, there is a passenger. So it comes with 2 people on the moped. So I would also go for moped from a use case perspective that has good seat bench and is actually available for 2 helmets and can hold 2 helmets if it's a helmet box or under the seat, which rarely any moped can actually do. So most of the mopeds, shared mopeds, they have a helmet box with 2 of the helmets. And then finally, instead of talking about price, about vehicle power or stuff like that, I would basically say long vehicle lifetime. So if we're talking about sustainability of the sector, the vehicle lifetime increases that, and also the profitability of the moped sharing business due to a better utilization rate. I think these are some of the factors which would matter from operator's perspective.
Okay, thank you, Enrico. All right, quick time check. We have 10 minutes left. We have one more round of questions. If any of you are able to stay maybe a few minutes longer, that'd be great. But for the next round of questions, I'll just ask you to maybe keep it a couple minutes for your answer. That way we still have a question or two, time for a question or two from the audience. So Oriol, let's go right to you. You introduced a private company sharing pilot. Tell us a little bit more about it if you can.
Yeah, so this is just a way of again trying to merge both worlds, B2C and B2B. And in the B2B side, we approach corporations, large ones, small ones, for different reasons. And one of the things we've seen is that some of them, not all, but some of them, would benefit from having the same solution we offer on the sharing side. This is their own sharing fleet, where they decide what's the jail fence, the area of service. Some of them will decide it's only for their own employees. Some of them can decide it's for their own customers. Let's say, for example, a hotel, a camping. Okay, so this is the concept of a private motor sharing. It is a B2B service. Okay, and this can be offered for both mopeds and e-bikes. And the main difference is that you need to be invited by someone, either because you've done, you are a guest in that hotel, or you are an employee of that company. We have already done the first test. Well, it was not a test, it was actually a real project with Wallbox, a unicorn here in Barcelona. And now we are already offering it in all the countries where we are. And we think that because all the enterprises, all the companies, certain size, and this is more and more common in Europe, need to promote sustainable mobility in their companies, we think this could be a very interesting solution for them as well.
Interesting. Yeah, it will be interesting to track that. Paul, next question for you. Big question. Let's talk about profitability. And what are the major points to make a moped sharing operator profitable?
All right, yeah, that's a big question. I mean, I can only speak about our experience at Czech right now. I mean, from the start at Czech, we always said, okay, we started in a period that money was super cheap, basically, but we said, okay, in order to become truly sustainable, we also need to build a viable company. So we basically need to make profit. And we always stick to three basic rules. So on the one hand, we have a neurotic focus for unit economics within the entire company. So everyone exactly knows what a trip costs. So all the departments know their contribution to what a trip costs. So and we are able to serve a trip for under 50 cents right now. And we know exactly what the support part or the spare parts part or the labor part is towards that trip. So I think that is super important to have that focus within the company. The second thing is that we always validate our growth project. So we call it, we don't scale bullshit. So if we do something new, we don't do it super big, but we do it super small, and we do it super fast as well. And we kill it if it doesn't work. I think that is also like a guideline in order to do new stuff, because otherwise you have if you scale bullshit, you have a big fucking problem within your company. And I think as a third thing, we don't, if we have a problem, we don't throw people at the problem. So we always try to solve it with software. So by doing this, we keep our headquarters super lean. Currently, we only have 25 people at HQ at Czech, but we do more than 8 million trips a year. We really want to keep it that lean. And I think, again, it's all about focus on those three areas.
Okay,
so that's it. It's not a magic formula, but yeah, you need to be aware of the money that goes out and the money that comes in, and in the end, you're able to make money.
all right. Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, there's no magic formula, but any insights we can get is great. Bertrand, back to you. We already you already gave us some interesting insight on how the industry has changed since 2015. Can you tell us a little bit more about how the moped sharing user behavior has changed over that time?
Yeah, well, it's as hard as the previous question to answer in 2 minutes, but I'll be quite quick. To me, the customer base is now much bigger, which shows that the market has really crystallized in the markets where we are. So basically, we are part of the life of the city, which is something, and we see more and more customers, but there is, I'd say, less loyalty and less frequency in usage, and especially since the COVID period. And also because micromobility has become a commoditized service. There is an increased number of substitution services, like more competition, other alternative micromobility services, and also the impact of hybrid work is important. So that's why, basically we have, in short, you can say that the usage is quite close from the pre-COVID period, depending on the city, sometimes above, sometimes under, but with a different mix, with more customer and, let's say, less ride per customer because of alternative solution and hybrid work. And also, last point that is important, and I don't see many women, unfortunately, on the call, is that, but it's increasing. We can see much more women and senior people using the service. That is as well the proof that they get more confident about the service, and that the services micromobility is really becoming part of the life of cities.
Thank you, Bertrand. Thank you for keeping it short. We're almost up on time here, but one more question for Rico, and we might have time for one question from the audience. Rico, you mentioned some interesting trends in the intro. You and the report authors talked to dozens of operators throughout when you were creating this report. Can you give us a little bit behind the scenes of any additional trends, any additional nuggets that you've noticed in 2022?
Yeah, like from a method perspective, we're talking to operators and we try to confirm fleet stats and to have like a good data set. We're also trying to fact checking with additional sources, but as you said, like along the way of talking to operators, we get a good gut feeling on a couple of trends and what moves operators. Apart from the 5 trends I mentioned earlier, maybe just to quickly name a couple of additional trends. I see that it's not black and white, but if we would choose between focusing on profitability and on super fast scaling, so this is no dichotomy, this is no black and white, but we see more and more operators focusing on profitability. That's definitely something. They're getting also more profitable. There are different operators which say they're profitable. Some they claim, well, this takes another couple of years. So this is definitely a focus we're seeing, profitability. We're less seeing operators focusing on very fast competition-oriented growth. So it's more like sustainable growth. This is something which I believe is also a difference in terms to kick scooter sharing hype back in the days, or we remember the free-floating bike sharing hype, like in 2017, 18 in Western Europe. O-Bike, or Ofo, Mobike, I think these were 2 of the companies which were quite aggressively expanding. This is something we're not seeing so much in moped sharing. I think that's the main difference also. Secondly, tenders. This is definitely something which we didn't mention much in the report apart from the Paris thing. So I just can confirm that what a couple of speakers said here. But I also believe that Kultra-Check and Cityscoot, you guys operate in markets which have a lot of experience with tenders, especially Netherlands, which is a long-standing tender country. Germany does not have so much of a tender tradition, and it's also kind of well-regulated, but in a more laissez-faire way. It's like a different way of running it here. It's more cooperation, but it's not that you need to register and win a tender. And then maybe to go with one more, finally, I think it's super interesting that moped sharing becomes more global. We talked about like in the last 10 years, moped sharing happens in Europe, and now we're seeing 36 countries. And I asked myself the question, can moped sharing be a success in Southeast Asia, which is like a huge moped market, one of the biggest moped markets globally? Will Indonesia continue to grow? What about the Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand? What about South America? We see a couple of operators being present there. And yeah, moped sharing becomes global, but I'm not sure about the speed and what kind of different success factors would be there. I think that is definitely something to be watched in the coming 2 years.
Excellent. Thank you, Rico. We are at the top of the hour. I hope at least a couple of our, or one or two of our panelists can stay for one more bonus question from the audience. But if people in the audience or people on the panel have a meeting to go to, of course, understand. One final housekeeping item. We should be sending out the report right now. You should be getting it in your inbox, and then in the next few days, I will send you the recording to this panel, as well as some links to some of the reports and articles mentioned here. So everybody who's got to go at the top of the hour, thank you for sticking around. And as far as the rest of the panel, we have one more bonus question here from the audience. Do any of you have insights showing that moped sharing is pulling people out from private cars? How would you evaluate the cultural change with regards to shared mobility adoption in the past years in the cities and countries where you operate? So yeah, are people giving up at least some of their private car use for your mopeds? And I leave that question open. I think Paul and Bertrand, I see you have your virtual hands raised. So Paul, maybe you can go first.
Yeah, I can briefly share. I mean, it was recently a survey in the city of Rotterdam as well as in the city of Amsterdam. So they basically asked, okay, what is the model shift here? So how would you have used the moped if it did not exist? How did you do the trip? And there was approximately 23 to 25% of all the users said, okay, I would have used a car. So that says something about car usage. But I think the more interesting thing is that there's a whole new generation that thinks differently about using vehicles. And so approximately 40% or 50% of all our users don't own a car. And the moment of buying a car, before they start using a moped sharing scheme, or before they start using check, they thought, okay, I'm going to buy a car within 3 years, but in 50% of the cases, that moment has been postponed. So I think that is the big win here.
Mm-hmm. Bertrand, something to add?
Yeah, well, first thing, we've done such surveys as well, and we have we did that a bit differently. We wanted to understand how many people among our customer base have dropped their primary means of transportation for a group of variety of solutions, and we got more or less the same number mentioned by Paul. Around 20% of people that literally sold their primary means of transport to use a bunch of mobility services. So this is the first thing. The other part of my answer is more a thought. Public transport, at least from what I know, is very much subsidized. So when you have a public transport that is subsidized up to sometimes 75% in France, when you provide a service that needs to be profitable, it rarely substitutes a subsidized transportation mode. So yes, sometimes it can, but on the long run, it's people who would own or would use alternative unsubsidized services that can afford to use the service. So in general, and that's just the thought, I understand the argument, and it's something that we hear a lot from municipalities, but it's bound to be false. It helps municipalities, and I think the main thing that we are all fighting is people driving a thermic car on their own in a city, and it goes on the right direction. It will eventually, sometimes we'll have someone that will use a service instead of public transport, but the vast majority is in the right direction.
Yeah, you're right, and that is kind of I think the goal of all shared mobility, not only micromobility, but also even car sharing, is to replace as many privately owned cars as possible with more efficient, more environment friendly shared cars. One more question, if anybody can stick around. There's a question here about vandalism. I'll basically summarize it to this. How was your reaction and company policies to vandalism, and any tips on how to avoid it?
Well, I can jump here if you don't mind.
Absolutely, please.
Vandalism is one of the biggest problems we face, right? I mean, probably it's not only in our industry, but you can find vandalism anywhere. But also vandalism is an opportunity for evolution, right? If I look down the road 7 years ago, if I see the vehicles we had towards the one we've got today, it's a totally different in terms of how we take care of all these small details that once were vandalized. Okay, so vandalism will always be there. Okay, it has a cost and an impact in our profit and loss in our businesses, and it totally depends on the cities where we are. Okay, for instance, I could have never imagined that Paris was the city with the highest levels of vandalism amongst the 7 cities where we are today. Okay, maybe here Bertrand can add something because he has been in Paris for more years than we have, but it's something that we have to live with, and we have to keep on improving and making our vehicles more robust in order to make things difficult. One of the biggest problems, I would say, is that there is one component which nowadays is very appreciated, which are the cells of a battery. Okay, and this makes our vehicles quite attractive. We are lucky that there isn't. Our vehicles are not that common. Okay, it's not. To use a brand, it's not like the standard Honda or Vespa that everybody owns. So it's difficult that most of the components or some of the components can be reused in a black market, right? But whenever there is a piece that can be reused and result in the black market, then you have a problem.
And if I can add one more thing, obviously the type of moped is key, but data is really helpful, and high rotation is something that helps low vandalism. Obviously, you tend to have vandalism in areas with low rotation, where the mopeds stick for a while, and the people see the moped idled. So adapt and understand the data is something that can be helpful as well.
Is part of the data use geolocation, for where you see more vandalism in some problem areas of cities? And curious what's your relationship to the city when it comes to that, right? Because the city would probably want you to serve all neighborhoods, particularly perhaps the less privileged neighborhoods equally. But you as an operator might go, well, my vehicles are being damaged there. Do any of you experience that that friction?
Yeah, obviously, you need it's always give and take with the municipality. So you can't be a yes man and say, okay, I'll leave all the mopeds going where they will obviously be destroyed. But you need as well to be as close as equal as you can. But once again, we are not a public service, so we are here to at least cover our costs. And when the costs rise, the price rises, and it's not to the benefit of the city in general. So it's a real matter of making the people at municipalities to understand the truth of the business model. So far, I mean, we've never ended up having to operate in areas where we really didn't want to. I mean, for us it is good. I don't know about you guys, but it always ended the right way.
I think in the end, you can always find a solution if you work together with the city. Maybe in those areas, there are certain areas with camera surveillance or whatsoever. So you are somehow able to make a win-win combination, to have certain areas with camera surveillance, but within the region and within the reach of the areas. So.
All right.
But I mean, you are present in cities, and there is unfortunately vandalism in cities. So,
awesome.
Surprise it in.
Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for taking some bonus time to answer well, maybe a slightly tricky question at the end there. So with that, letting everybody go, thank you. Audience, please look for emails from us. You should be receiving the email with your report download link shortly if you haven't already, and then it'll be some follow-up emails as well with recordings and links to some of the other articles and blogs that we mentioned here. So Oriol, Paul, Bertrand, and Enrico, thank you again for your time. This was great. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao.